Alright, so if you notice, that stud to this carburetor has almost like a Torx head on it. Here's how you get it off.
Alright, fellow fixers, this video was shot when we were prepping for the hurricanes and we were cleaning carburetors on generators just to make sure that everything was working perfectly. In this video I'm going to show you how to clean the carburetors on a generator, and also this particular generator had one of those Torx mounting post screws. I'm going to show you how to get those off the easiest way possible without too much fuss and without stripping anything on it. Let's get to it.
Alright, so if you notice, that stud to this carburetor has almost like a Torx head on it. Here's how you get it off. In this case, it's a tiny little 4mm socket. Once you have it loosened, you can literally just take it out with your fingers.
Alright, so that video was how to get my brother-in-law's carburetor off of his generator. It took us a little bit to figure out what the heck was going on with that. I've never experienced those little Torx posts on there. But we got that off. Now I'm going to show you how I clean my carburetor on my old Chinese 3300 cheap generator. So let's get to it. It was overflowing fuel into the engine compartment, and so I'm going to show you how I clean it out. Let's get to it. Alright, so the first thing you want to do on this one is go ahead and take off the air box air cleaner. Mine had a couple clips on the bottom and then these 4 screws. You take it off, and then on the inside there's just a couple little bolts, nuts that you take off. Just find the right socket size and you can remove those, and then that actually frees up the whole thing, as well as the carburetor. You can pull the fuel line off and just pull the carburetor out. Then you can go ahead and take the bowl off the bottom, and you can see here that there is a float, and the way that that works is whenever the bowl fills up with fuel, there's a little needle valve that plugs a hole so that fuel doesn't flow into the carburetor, so that as you're at higher RPMs it basically adjusts itself with that float bowl. And so mine is overflowing into the engine compartment, so that needle valve was not seated well. So what I'm going to do is actually flush out that valve, make sure that it's all nice and clean. And I'm just going to use carb cleaner and make sure I blow everything else out, all the other holes that I can get to. I'm not pulling everything apart on this. You can use like a tiny little piece of wire to make sure all of your jets and everything are clean. Typically I will just use some carb cleaner and blow it through all the little jets and ports that I can find. There is another valve right in the middle of that post that sticks into the bowl, and you can use a screwdriver and just take that out and then blow that out, make sure it's nice and clean, and then put it all back together. I actually stretched that spring out a little bit to make sure that the needle valve was getting a good seat whenever it was full of fuel, so that it wasn't overflowing into the engine compartment. But the biggest thing with these generators is when you run them, make sure that when you're done with them, turn off the fuel valve so that no fuel is going to the carburetor, and just let it burn off whatever's in the carburetor. Just let it run until it shuts off. That'll just ensure that even if you're using ethanol fuel, that it will not gum up the carburetor, because there's literally no fuel that sits in the carburetor. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and put it all back together. Put the air cleaner back on, attach the nuts to those studs that are sticking out, and then attach the fuel line. And then once I get it all put back together, I will start it back up and see it run. I always run the fuel out just so I don't have any issues with the carburetor, and then I turn off the fuel valve so my carburetor doesn't get gummed up.
Alright, fellow fixers, that's it for this one. We got those generators running. Thanks so much for watching this video. Check this out if you haven't. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.